Part 3. I have the option of love in the starry sky. Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 21. Well, he won't freeze to death like this. Judging from the strength he showed just now, this temperature won't freeze him to death, not to mention that Bo Chang didn't take off his clothes. Dan Han put away his spear. Like Heimko, he also has space equipment and can put away his weapons at any time. On March 7th, there will be no zinc Ba-Kang. But March 7's blue longbow is also made of 6-phase ice. It can be summoned when you want to use it and destroyed when you don't use it. It is very convenient, unlike Bo Chang and Xing, who have to carry weapons with them. Bo Chang's oath spear can fly on its own, which is a little better. Star needs to hurry up. I just don't want him to interfere with everyone's actions, and I don't intend to kill him. Bo Chang buried Sangbo behind a snowdrift. The system prompt sounded immediately. Rewards are being distributed, congratulations on getting the invisible hand. The invisible hand, is this Natsuki Sabaru's thing? Bo Chang felt something was inside his body. He used it subconsciously, and instantly 3 big purple-black hands appeared around him. He could operate them to make any movement at will. Like giving the middle finger. And no one can see it? Does this mean I can do indescribable things with these hands? Bo Chang could feel very keenly that these 3 big hands were tactile just like his real hands. He could feel the falling snowflakes and the cold air. Then what should we do now? March 7th looked at Bo Chang, who was distracted. He came back to his senses and said, "Hide the snowmobile and let's go in another direction to avoid encountering the silver-maned iron guard this guy calls. Anyway, I don't want to be arrested." No one has an opinion. So, after walking around in a circle, the 4 finally arrived at Baloberg. It was a city surrounded by high walls and surrounded by mountains. Except for the city, everything else was covered with snow. Finally we're here, I feel like I've opened up a big circle. March 7th put his hands on his hips. Dan Heng spread his hands. It seems, we still have to find a way to climb over those high walls. Chapter 29, Exploring Information. For the pioneering team. Climbing a high wall is not difficult. After a little effort, a group of 4 people successfully sneaked into Baloberg. This is the last human gathering place in Yali-Luo 6. It is also known as the Guardian City, the Eternal City, and the only fortress for mankind to resist the cold wave. The entire Baloberg is divided into upper and lower areas. The upper levels were responsible for administration and trade. The lower level is responsible for energy supply and resource development. However, due to an order many years ago, there has been no exchange of personnel between the upper and lower areas for many years. It can be said to be the second Piltover, Zon. We can't say they are exactly the same, we can only say they are exactly the same. The 4 people who climbed over the wall and entered Baloberg naturally appeared in the upper area, and only here could they see the sky. The lower area is underground. It is simply impossible to see the sky. Although the clothes of Ba-Kang and others are obviously different from those of the locals. But it also didn't attract too much attention. At most, it will be looked at twice, and then it will be gone. It won't feel cold once we enter the city. March 7th spit out a stream of white mist. Dan Heng replied, "After all, it is a place where humans live. It is normal to be warmer. Bo Chang, do you have any plans next? If not, everyone should disperse and search for information, we will still gather here in 5 hours. Dan Heng turned his head to look at Bo Chang, because he had already entered the city and wanted to avoid the weapon attracting attention. Therefore, it was very convenient for the black-haired boy to throw the oath spear outside Baloberg and bury it in the ice and snow. If necessary, he could just summon it. Xing's baseball bat is not very conspicuous, so it's okay for her to carry it with her. I don't have any plans. Just go with your ideas, Dan Hung. Bo Chang nodded. The other two girls also agreed. In March, you will act with seeing. Remember, you must be careful. Dan Hung was not worried about letting March 7th run away alone, and the pink-haired girl was also happy. Bo Chang thought for a moment and said, "It's just that I don't know how to search for information." The black-haired boy before time travel was just a student, not an agent. It was normal that he didn't know how to search for information. Star echoed. Me neither. March 7th patted the gray-haired girl on the shoulder and said, "It's okay, let us teach you." Well, this is indeed a problem. After all, this is your first mission, but there is no need to worry. Just like taking a walk, you can just walk around the city and find out as much as you can. The rest leave it to me, as long as you don't make too much noise, especially you, March. Dan Hung crossed his arms, back when he was on a mission with March 7th and Walter Yang. Dan Hung and Walter Yang often separated to find out information. So, he is quite skilled at this kind of thing. March 7th placed his hands on his hips and said, "I understand, I won't cause any trouble. If something really happens, contact me through the phone." Dan Hung obviously didn't trust San Yuqi very much. Before leaving, he reminded him again and again. Bo Chang touched his chin and said, "Is that so? I thought you were going to take me with you and give me some pointers. It's not suitable for multiple people to act together to gather intelligence, but, if you need it, I can help." Dan Hung didn't expect Bo Chang to say that, but after thinking about it carefully, it's really good to teach him. The black-haired boy said, "Forget it, I'd rather go shopping by myself. Let's go separately." Dan Hung shook his head slightly, not quite understanding what the other party was thinking. Next, the four of them split into 3 teams, each heading in a different direction. Bo Chang chose the right side. He walked around the streets and alleys to feel the customs and habits of Baloberg. After walking for a distance, Bo Chang encountered a rift. This thing is a space distortion phenomenon that appears with the star core. It constantly eats away at reality and affects normal people, turning them into monsters. In addition, in the rift, there will be rift creatures. Those are monsters that are copied and generated after the rift collects biological data and assimilates it. They retain the original biological form but have mutations. Before entering Baloberg, Bo Chang and others have encountered rift creatures. At that time, they avoided it if they could, and they just dealt with it if they couldn't. Where the rift was generated, there are many soldiers of the Silver Main Iron Guard stationed. They hold long axes and guns and block the surroundings. No one is allowed to pass through. They can only use this method to control the disasters caused by the rift. The rift has spread to the city. The original plot mentioned this. This should be considered as intelligence. Write it down, and you will have something to say when you go back later. This place has been blocked. Bo Chang can only change another way to continue walking. After turning a circle, Bo Chang actually met Sanyuki, and seeing the two of them were gathered in front of an ice sculpture, commenting on something. This should be the city center. Bo Chang also saw a girl surrounded by a group of children, Pelagia Sergeyevna. Para for short. This girl in the Silver Main Iron Guard uniform is the intelligence officer of the Silver Main Iron Guard. When Bo Chang walked over, Para was introducing the ice sculpture in front of him. "Okay, children, please look, this is the Eternal Winter Monument. It was erected to commemorate the great city builders, and the city builders are followers of the star god Clipper. They foresaw the crisis, erected high walls, built Baloberg, and preserved the fire of mankind. To this day, they are still managing the city." Paris spoke very excitedly, and the children next to him listened very seriously, including March 7 and Seeing. When Bo Chang walked to his side, the two of them found him. March 7 said, "Bo Chang, how did you get here?" The road I took had a rift, and I took a detour, and then inexplicably. Bo-Chang shrugged. Sanyuki exclaimed, has the rift corrosion reached the city? From what I saw, it is like this. Ba-Kame nodded. At this time, Para's introduction was finished, and she asked loudly. Does anyone have any questions? Scene looked at Ba-Kame and Sanyuki and said, Para seems to know a lot of things. If we don't understand anything, we can ask her. Who will go? Just now, you called her sister Para in front of so many people, together with the children. I won't go. Sanyuki shook his head. Ba-Kame, you should go. Hearing the pink-haired girl's revelation, Scene showed an embarrassed but polite smile. Ba-Kame felt that he seemed to be a little late. If he had come earlier, he should have seen an interesting scene. Go, go, the key is, what should we ask? Chapter 30 Add some more. Why don't we ask what that blue crystal is? When I see that, I will think, will this place be related to my life experience? Sanyuki's eyes wandered over the monument. Before the pink-haired girl was picked up by the starry sky train, she had been frozen in a large block of ice, drifting in the universe, so when she saw this kind of crystals, she couldn't help but have some fantasies. I have the option of love in the starry sky. Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 22. In fact, when seeing this icy planet, March 7 considered whether it was his hometown and whether it had anything to do with his past. Of course. March 7 didn't want this to be his hometown either, for a simple reason, it was too cold. Bo-Chang put one hand on his waist. Is there nothing else besides this? What does Scene want to ask? I'm curious about how the cold wave that Para mentioned came about. Scene knew that all this was related to the Star Core, but she still wanted to learn about it from the locals. Maybe there would be unexpected gains. Okay, then I'll go ask. Bo-Chang nodded. He walked out of the crowd and raised his hand. I have a question. Excuse me. Para smiled and said. Bo-Chang said, what is this blue crystal? Are you asking about the material? That's the earth marrow that has changed color. The earth marrow is a mineral energy source that is unique to Yellow 6. From urban heating to the counter in your hand, all are powered by the earth marrow. The lower area of Baloberg is used to mine the earth marrow. The lower area also exchanges support materials with the upper area through the earth marrow. And, do you know how the cold wave appeared? When Bo-Chang asked this question, the smile on Para's face slowly disappeared. She looked him up and down, wondering if he came to tease her adults. After all, the girl who was with him just now shouted Para's sister with the children as if nothing had happened. Forget it, let's not pursue these things. Para would not show her bad side in front of the children. You should ask the experts in the scientific research department for this question, not me, although they may not be able to give an accurate answer. After all, the cause of the cold wave is a problem that has troubled Baloberg scientists for centuries. Para is not tall. Although she is a girl, her body size is not much bigger than that of a loli. So, she is a legal loli. Para, wearing a blue and white uniform, looked up at Bo-Chang. She had a literary temperament with black round-framed glasses, which Gzi, Sing, and Sanyuki did not have. And the other person has a cute little round face, which makes people want to rub it. Any more questions? As soon as Para finished speaking, the whole world fell into a state of stagnation again. The love option has been opened. Option 1, seriously said, I want to know your measurements. Completion reward, get a random prop, from a matchstick to a star destroyer. Note, this kind of prop will. Option 2, slightly bowed and said, I want to know how to invite a beautiful girl like you to dinner. Completion reward, Yandera's double gaze. Note, watch your back. Option 3, ordinary answer, I have no problem, Sister Para. Completion reward, Para's white eyes. You want me to choose one, right? How can I say such a thing in public with such a small reward, Bo Chang muttered in his heart, unless you add more. Obviously, facing Bo Chang's question, Love Option has no intention of replying at all. The black-haired boy continued to mutter. But it's strange. When asked about her measurements in public, Para didn't give me a big slap. She's really too gentle. Bo Chang suddenly realized something. Wait, could it be that she's too short to hit me? If the reward for option 2 wasn't a bit negative, Bo Chang would definitely want to choose the second one. Why don't we try avoiding Sing and Sanyuki next time? It's really not good to flirt with other girls in front of them. Then he struggled between option 1 and option 3. Both options are a bit embarrassing. The difference is that option 3 is less embarrassing, but there is no reward. Hesitated for a moment. Then let's go with option 1. In the end, Bo Chang still succumbed to the reward. The world became dynamic again, and the footsteps and people's conversations around him came into his ears, forming a sharp contrast with the silent world just now. Bo Chang said seriously, I want to know your measurements. Huh? Para, wearing a black felt hat, was stunned for a moment, and didn't react for a long time. Like a small animal encountering a natural enemy. It instantly went into a dead state. Sanyuki also widened his eyes and mouth, showing an incredible expression. The children next to him didn't know what the 3 measurements meant. They just watched quietly. Sanyuki's little hand suddenly rested on Bakang's shoulder, and showed an apologetic expression to Para, saying, Sorry, this guy's head was pinched by the door just now, and he hasn't recovered yet. I'm sorry to trouble you. I'll take him away now. After that, Bakang was dragged away by Sanyuki's shoulders, and he didn't mean to resist. Para. The girl with blue hair and blue eyes watched the backs of the 3 people leaving, with a thoughtful expression on her face. These 3 people are a bit strange. This can be seen just from their clothes. Para thought to herself, do you want to investigate? On the other side, Bakang listened nervously to the prompt sound of the system. Rewards are being distributed. Congratulations on getting a delicious crab roe bun. Give it to others, it may deepen your friendship. Note, this prop has been stored in the system space. Delicious crab roe buns, Bo Chang scratched his head. This thing looks like it is used to kidnap children. Maybe you can try giving it to Clara. It just so happened that Bo Chang still had his partner's belly band. When the time came, he would first use delicious crab roe buns to get closer, and then take out his belly band. Just when Bo Chang was making small calculations. March 7th has already brought Sing and Bo Chang into the alley. I said, what were you thinking about just now? March 7th pointed, why do you suddenly ask a girl for her measurements? This will bother her very much. Hey. Bo Chang tapped his temple. March 7th complained, hey, what do you mean? Forget it, from now on, you must never ask a girl about her measurements in public, even if you are curious, really. And Sing, don't call others Sister Pella as if it's nothing. Sigh, when I stay with you, I always feel like I'm going to be treated as a weirdo. Bo Chang, my measurements are. Sing, who was silent for a moment, suddenly spoke. Listen to the mysterious number reported by the gray-haired girl. Bo Chang looked at it carefully and said, it turns out that Sing is pretty good, you can't tell from the appearance at all. Chapter 31 Sambo is coming. Hey, hey, hey. What on earth are you talking about? That is not suitable for children. A blush flew up on March 7's face, and she waved it in the air hurriedly. How can you say such things so casually? I really can't stand you two anymore. As expected, the almighty teacher Dan Hung is more reliable. March 7th said angrily. Bo Chang and Sing looked at each other and smiled, and the surroundings were filled with happy air. Instead of continuing the nonsense, in this dim alley, The pink-haired girl spread her hands and got down to business. Back to the subject, it's still early, should we continue separately, or together? What do Bo Chang think? Scene looked at the black-haired boy and replied, it's better to separate. It's more efficient. If anything happens, just contact me and Dan Hung in time. I understand, Bo Chang, don't act like a mother-in-law like Dan Hung. March 7th waved her hand casually. Bo Chang crossed his arms and said, I remember someone just said that the omnipotent teacher Dan Hung should be more reliable. Why did it change in just 10 seconds? This is not your business, just a little bit. March 7th made a face at Bo Chang, then took Scene and ran out. The black-haired boy was left alone. Shaking his head, Bo Chang continued to wander around Belloberg. Not long after he left, an unexpected person appeared in front of him. Huh, you really gave me a good meal. The visitor was none other than Sambo Koski. Not long ago, everyone had just knocked him unconscious and buried him in the snow, but they didn't expect to catch up with him so quickly. Sambo? I thought you would be caught by the silver-maned iron guard. Bo Chang was blocked in an alley by the other party. Sambo raised his short blue hair and said, Silver-maned iron guard? Thanks to you, I was almost caught. Fortunately, I ran fast enough. I was very curious as to why you bumped into me as soon as we met, and then knocked me unconscious and buried me in the snow when you were done. I thought, I shouldn't have anywhere to provoke you. Sambo took out two short knives in his hands, which were his weapons. Actually, it's okay to say that these are two daggers. Anyway, they have the same meaning, they just have different names. Normal people would become suspicious when encountering strangers in ice and snow. Facts have proved that you are indeed no ordinary person. I also want to ask you, Sambo, are you waiting for us there on purpose? Before coming to Belloberg, Dan Hung and March 7th also asked Bo Chang similar questions. Of course, that's what he answered. Dan Hung also said, in March, you should learn more from Bo Chang's vigilance, so that we can avoid a lot of trouble. Humph, it seems that you know a lot. Sambo, don't hate dealing with smart people. The premise is, you are really smart and not mentally weak. Idiot. Bo Chang could see it. Sambo is not in a good mood now. This is normal. Anyone who is knocked unconscious and thrown into the snow, and almost caught by the silver-maned iron guard, will not be in a good mood. What? You came to my door now just because you want to say a few harsh words to me. Bo Chang was not worried about Sambo attacking him, nor was he in a hurry to summon the Spear of Oath. Because the three invisible hands are ready. It is different from the use of Dragon Talisman, which requires physical strength. The invisible hand consumes mental power, and the consumption is not large. Likewise, it is not as powerful as the Dragon Talisman. Bo Chang tried it secretly. Sambo's breathing slowed down a little, and he said, of course not, I just think we can have a good chat. You have already walked around Belloberg. What do you think of it here? It's okay. After taking a walk around here, Bo Chang felt that the atmosphere of the city was okay. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I have the option of Love in the Starry Sky. Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 23. If there is no impact of the rift. That would be even better. If you go to the lower area, you won't think so. Sangbo shook his head and sighed, what you said just now is also very good. I was waiting for you there at that time. I did not have good intentions, but it was just to let you know what kind of person the ruler here is. That's all, my friend. If you encounter any difficulties in the future, you can come to the lower area to find me. Of course, maybe when you encounter difficulties, I will take the initiative to find you. Who makes me Sangbo a kind-hearted person with a warm nature. As he said, Sangbo retreated, he put away his two swords and disappeared into the shadow of the alley. Bo Chang saw this and put away the invisible hand. About Sangbo's attitude change. Basically, it was when the invisible hand appeared. If Bo Chang had not used this ability, perhaps the other party would not leave so easily. Did he notice the invisible hand? If Sambo had not been attacked by everyone before, he would not have been knocked out in such a short time. The opponent's strength is still very strong, but even if the opponent is very strong, he should not have noticed the invisible hand. Unable to figure it out, Bo Chang gave up thinking and muttered, "So what is his purpose just now, want to kidnap me?" In order to avoid accidents to others, Bo Chang contacted them in advance with his mobile phone and asked everyone to gather in advance. In less than half an hour, all members of the pioneer team were present. Dan Heng spoke first. "I didn't expect that Sangbo would come to our door. It seems that the water in Baloberg is deeper than we thought. We must be more vigilant in the next action. Don't act separately for the time being." "Oh, it's okay. With the four of us here, nothing can't be solved." Sanyuki spread his hands and looked at the gray-haired girl. "Look, Sean has a star core in his body, Bo Chang has all kinds of magical props, I have the unique six-phase ice, and Dan Heng has, I don't know what kind of mysterious past. Whoever dares to cause trouble to us, it's bad luck to him." Sanyuki put his hands on his hips. Sean echoed, "It's bad luck to him." How long has the repetition symptom lasted?" Sanyuki looked at Sean speechlessly. This time, Bo Chang did not repeat. The gray-haired girl was a little disappointed. Dan Heng sighed and pressed his forehead. If Walter Yang was there, maybe he wouldn't have such a headache. At least he could have a good discussion with someone. The three people in front of me are not very reliable. Bo Chang may be reliable, but he is a novice after all, and often he still has to rely on Dan Heng to take the lead. There is really a problem. Bo Chang would say, "Dan Heng, you come. It is almost the same as March 7. Speaking of it, Walter Yang actually wanted to come on this pioneering journey, but GZI and he were on guard against the antimatter army. So they all stayed on the train, leaving all the opportunities for performance to the young people." Next, the four exchanged the information they had found out and roughly described the situation of Baloberg. The concept of the upper and lower areas. Terms such as Silver Main Iron Guards, City Builders, and Great Guardians were brought up one by one. Chapter 32 Exchange. In the information exchange, Dan Heng said the most, followed by March 7 and Sean, and the least was Bo Chang. This is normal, after all, Bo Chang is a novice. And the reason why he said less information is because he was the last to speak, and many common news had already been said by Dan Heng, Sean, and March 7. We have roughly understood the situation in the upper area. As for the lower area, Dan Heng shook his head slightly. The road down is blocked. There are many Silver Main Iron Guards stationed there. We can't get through. March 7 said, "Why don't we go directly to the Great Guardian?" As the ruler of the city, she probably doesn't want to see the disaster of the Star Corps wreak havoc. As long as she knows the whole story, she will definitely help us. The rift caused by the Star Corps has spread to the city. If it goes on like this, Baloberg will have a big problem. That's right, but what if there are enemies among the rulers? Wouldn't it be bad to expose yourself rashly? Bo Chang didn't mention Kakalaya by name. As passengers of the Star Dome train, Dan Heng and March 7 both knew that the Star Corps would affect people's minds. After all, the two have come into contact with the Star Corps many times. That's true, March, do you remember the last time we were wanted? Dan Heng spread his hands. Sanyuki scratched his head helplessly and said, "What should we do then, continue to gather information? Or go to the lower level area?" Let's find a way to go to the lower level area. Isn't that Sangbo from the lower level area? Bakame is also suspicious of the ruler here because of his warning. It seems that he knows a lot of things. It's also a good choice for us to meet him. Danhan said a lot. No one refuted, so the matter of going to the lower level area was confirmed. But, before that, we have to find a place to stay. It may take more than a short time to go to the lower area. Dan Heng's eyes swept over the three people, so we have to go to work, right? March 7th pressed his temple with a headache. Dan Heng said calmly, no. March, have you forgotten? I just said that the Winter City Shield here can be exchanged for credit points. One Winter City Shield can be exchanged for 50 credit points. Winter City Shield is the currency of Baloberg. And credit points are the universal currency between universes. When Baloberg lost contact with the universe and almost no outsiders visited, it can still be exchanged for credit points. This is indeed an incredible thing. But think about it, many years ago, Baloberg was also a very prosperous area in the universe, with a large number of spacecrafts coming and going every day, until the disaster 700 years ago. So credit points are still used as currency now. It's not surprising. Ah, this. Sanyuki scratched his head, I didn't pay attention just now. Sanyuki thought that credit points could not be used here, so he proposed the idea of working to earn money. Unexpectedly, it was still in circulation, but when he heard that one Dongcheng shield was equal to 50 credit points, Sanyuki started a brainstorming. One Dongcheng shield can buy a loaf of bread, and 10 credit points can also buy a loaf of bread, which means, I use 50 credit points to exchange for one Dongcheng shield, and I lose 40 credit points. Xing said, in other words, you earn one Dongcheng shield, which is equivalent to earning 40 more credit points. Until now, Bo Chang has a little understanding of the purchasing power of credit points. It doesn't matter, after the pioneering mission is over, GZI will reimburse us. Dan Heng didn't care, so we are going to exchange for Dongcheng shields now. Okay, I'll listen to you. Sanyuki had no objection. Then the four of them acted together and followed Dan Heng to a place to exchange hundreds of Dongcheng shields. This money is enough for everyone to live here for several days. Next, Dan Heng led everyone to look for clues to see how to get to the lower area. Running around in the upper area of Baloberg. Until the evening. Dan Heng found a little clue. Sanyuki, Xing, and Bakame were all exhausted. Let's do this for today, and continue tomorrow. Dan Heng stopped. Bakame, you have been running for so long just now, have you learned anything? Maybe, learned a little bit. Bakame blinked. Dan Heng said, that's good, as long as there is progress, then tonight, everyone will rest in this hotel. Although there is only one city on this planet. But there is still a demand for hotels here. The reason is also very simple, not everyone has a house. Many people who can't afford to buy a house can only live in a hotel for a long time to get a place to shelter from the wind and rain. It looks a bit simple. Sanyuki looked at the old and shabby decoration in front of him and sighed. Dan Heng glanced at her. If you want to stay in a more expensive hotel, you can, as long as you are willing to pay. Let's make it clear first, if the consumption is too high, GZI will not reimburse us all, so let's save as much as possible. Okay, okay. March 7 helplessly spread his hands, and the four of them stepped into the hotel. The wooden floor creaked when stepped on, as if to remind the boss that there were guests. In everyone's eyes, a middle-aged woman stood up from behind the counter and said, welcome to the inn, are there 4 guests in total? How many rooms do you need? 2 rooms, Dan Heng said, taking out a Winter City shield, stay for a day. During his previous stroll, Dan Heng had already inquired about the prices here. So there was no need to ask. Okay, here are the keys to 207 and 208. The four of you go to the second floor and find them according to the house number. After the proprietress confirmed that the funds were correct, she handed over 2 keys. 2 rooms. Of course, Bo Chang and Dan Heng shared 1 room, and March 7 and Seeing shared 1 room. This was agreed upon in advance. Enter different rooms. Dan Heng turned around and said, "Now we have time, Bo Chang, do you want to learn how to use the spear?" "Of course, I can, but is it too small to practice here? The wooden floor here creaks when you step on it." To be honest, Bo Chang is really worried that he will use too much force and collapse it all of a sudden. When you first start learning spearmanship, you only need to learn the posture, you don't need to use too much force, and you don't need to be picky about the venue. Dan Heng crossed his arms across his chest, and he had already taken out the spear from the space equipment. Bo Chang said, "Okay." With the black-haired boy's agreement, Dan Heng threw the spear in his hand and handed it to Bo Chang. "Your spear is outside, and it's not easy to take it back now. For the time being, you can use this one. I have the option of love in the starry sky." Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 24. No problem. Chapter 33 Ali. Under Dan Heng's guidance, Bo Chang practiced marksmanship for 2 hours before lying down to rest. There was only 1 bed in this room, and Dan Heng didn't mind squeezing in with Bo Chang. So, the two slept on the same bed. Although Bo Chang felt a little crowded, he still slept soundly. The star on the other side couldn't sleep well. The poor conditions are secondary. Key star always dreams, and there are 2 voices in the dream that keep talking. Kakalaya, allies, worlds, wishes, and various words with unknown meanings flood into her mind, which makes her not have a good rest, causing her to wake up the next day. Star's mental state is not good. Bo Chang was called up by Dan Heng early in the morning to improve his marksmanship. When Xing got up on March 7, he had already been practicing the tricks for half an hour. Techniques for exerting force. Dan Heng hasn't taught him yet, and Bo Chang is now dancing with the gun, feebly and weakly. Isn't that just a show? But in the process of practicing flower arrogance, Bo Chang also had a lot of insights. Occasionally, he stabbed out a spear with understanding. It didn't use much force, but it still made a buzzing sound. Jean Danhan said with emotion, "The talent is good, keep working hard." Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door, and Dan Heng said, "The door is unlocked, come in." Just by hearing the familiar knock on the door, Dan Heng knew who the other person was. March 7 pushed the door open and her first sight was the black-haired boy who was working out hard. She showed a surprised expression. Bo Chang has been practicing his marksmanship early in the morning, he is really diligent. Behind the pink-haired girl was Seeing. After she came in, she yawned. Dan Heng asked, "Seeing, you didn't rest last night, okay? Did March disturb you?" The beautiful girl doesn't snore or move around when sleeping. How could she disturb Seeing? She had too many dreams last night. I asked her just now, Dan Heng, please don't talk nonsense. Before Seeing could speak, March 7 was the first to finish his rebuttal. The gray-haired girl just nodded, not knowing whose statement she was agreeing with. Dan Heng had no idea of speaking. Seeing everyone getting up, Bo Chang, who was playing with the spear, also stopped and returned the weapon to Dan Heng. Bo Chang said, "Everyone is here, shall we continue to take action?" "Well, but before that, we have to have breakfast first." March 7 stretched out his fingers to gesture in the air, "If you don't have a full meal, you will definitely not have the energy to work. I have already chosen a place to eat. Come with me." Dan Heng nodded slightly. Although everyone also walked around the upper area of Baloberg. No matter whether it is March 7, Seeing or Bo Chang, they are all like little deaf and blind people who are not clear about the surrounding environment. Dan Heng was different, he had made all preparations early. Bo Chang and others just followed him without thinking. Dan Heng was familiar with the neighborhood as if he were a local. Okay, March Chi cheered first, and then she said with a serious face, Dan Heng, you can barely make do with the place where you live, but you can never make do with it when you eat. You should understand this, right? Don't worry. The place I took you to eat yesterday was pretty good, wasn't it? Dan Heng spread his hands with a helpless expression. March 7th patted her plump chest and said, then I'm relieved, let's go. Speaking of food, there is also a delicious crab roe bun in Bo Chang's system space. In fact, the black-haired boy was very curious about the taste of this stuff, but for the sake of Clara next, he could only endure it for a while. Then it will be delicious to use the delicious crab roe buns to abduct the little girl. A group of 4 people set off in a mighty manner. After spending dozens of Winterfell shields and having a full meal, Dan Heng led everyone through alleys and finally arrived at today's destination. The dark alley was filled with the smell of corruption, and sewage was flowing across the ground without anyone treating it. As soon as they arrived nearby, March Chi and Scene covered their mouths and noses, and the unpleasant smell couldn't stop coming in. If I hadn't heard that someone here knew how to get to the lower area, everyone would have turned around and left. Come to an open door. Dan Heng knocked a few times regularly, and soon a fat middle-aged man walked out. His eyes were very small, almost a slit, and he didn't know if his field of vision was smaller than normal people. For what? The middle-aged man's eyes swept across the 4 people and finally landed on Dan Heng. Although the eyes are not big, but the other party's observation skills are still very keen, and he can tell at a glance that Dan Heng is the leader. Of course, it's also possible that they were already seen when everyone came in. Dan Heng was leading the way. The other party also knocked on the door. In this case, it is not surprising to see who is first and who is second. Dan Heng said, we want to know the way to the lower area. Lower area? The middle-aged man looked them over. Interesting, want to go to the lower area? Do you understand the rules? What rules? Dan Heng asked. The middle-aged man stretched out his hand. It's very simple. If you want to go to the lower area, you can get 1,000 Winter City shields by yourself. If you don't have it, there's no need to talk. 1,000? Are you trying to steal it? March 7's eyes widened. According to everyone's previous investigation, the people in the upper-class district only earn 500 Winter City shields per month of work. If they save a little, this money is enough to support a family. And this man, he asked for 1,000 Winter City shields, which is really exaggerated. Normal people would not be willing to take it out. Yes, I am robbing. March 7 said casually, but he didn't expect the other party to admit it directly. As soon as the voice fell, the closed doors around opened, and many strong men came out. They were all holding weapons and approaching step by step. They seemed to be ill-intentioned. Really, if possible, I really don't want to fight in a place like this. March 7 pressed his forehead. Bo Chang looked at Dan Heng, who replied expressionlessly, it is normal to encounter certain dangers when you want to obtain information that is prohibited by the current society. Bo Chang, be ready to fight. They are just a group of gangsters. It is not difficult to deal with them. Well. Bo Chang nodded, and Seeing, holding a black baseball bat, also approached him. Seeing being looked down upon, the middle-aged man said, a group of young people seeking excitement dare to look down on us. It seems that it is time to show you some color. At the command, the strong men rushed up one by one. It would be better if this guy didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, Dan Heng's attention was diverted. Before the enemy arrived, he took the lead in picking up the spear and launched a surprise attack on the middle-aged man. As for the safety of March 7th, Seeing and Bo Chang, Dan Heng was not worried. Chapter 34 Para. Only a scream was heard, and within a minute, there were people lying on the ground in the alley. Some people were unlucky. After falling down, their bodies were covered with dirty water, which looked very disgusting. Those who still had strength to spare all tumbled and crawled out. But most of them fell down and wailed. How could these shrimp soldiers and crab generals be opponents of Bo Chang and others? They were all knocked down easily. Mercy, mercy. My lord. I was wrong. I was wrong. The middle-aged man who was held on the chin by Dan Heng with a spear knelt on the ground and begged for mercy loudly. This guy dared to act arrogantly here, he must have some strength. He started his life, but unfortunately he couldn't hold on for a few hits when facing Dan Heng, and was knocked to the ground. Now he can only beg for mercy. Tell me, how do we get to the lower area? Dan Heng's spear moved forward slightly, piercing a small hole in the middle-aged man's neck, and bright red blood flowed down. His facial features wrinkled up, and he hurriedly said, "Sir, I don't know. I don't know how to get to the lower area at all. The upper and lower areas have been closed for many years. Until now, I haven't heard of anyone who can go down. I really didn't lie." The middle-aged man hurriedly said a lot. March 7 was a little helpless. So we met a liar and a strong bandit. It seems so. Dan Heng put away the spear, and the middle-aged man finally breathed a sigh of relief. He felt a warm feeling coming from his crotch. When he touched it, he realized that he had peed his pants out of fear. Bo Chang shook his head and said, "It was a wasted trip." "It's not a wasted trip. Since this guy is robbing here and has a dozen thugs, he must have a lot of Winter City shields on him. I say, we can't go back empty-handed." March 7 showed a kind smile. She wanted to rob the thieves. Bo Chang and Seeing both showed expressions of sudden enlightenment. Just then, a burst of footsteps suddenly came. Dan Heng's eyes focused and found that a blue-haired girl wearing black silk appeared from the direction where everyone came. The person who came was Pella. "Why do you want to go to the lower area? Don't you know that the Great Guardian has blocked the passage?" Pella, wearing round frame glasses, looked serious. Since yesterday, she has been investigating the intelligence of the four people, and found that they have no household registration. This problem is not a big deal. I have the option of love in the starry sky. Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 25. Not too small to say small. In Baloberg, there are many people who do not register as household registration in order to avoid taxes. Bo Chang was shocked and didn't know why the other party appeared in such a place. "Is it Sambo? This probably has nothing to do with you." Dan Heng didn't take Pella seriously at all and answered casually. Pella said, "I am the intelligence officer of the Silver Main Iron Guard, so naturally I cannot just sit idly by and ignore this kind of thing. You weird guys, please cooperate with my investigation, otherwise, I will show no mercy." The romance option is turned on. Option 1, reprimand the opponent loudly. "Since you said you were the intelligence officer of the Silver Main Iron Guard, why didn't you help when the robbers attacked us? Instead, you hid and watched." Completion reward, obtain the 3-star destruction light cone and the sky will fall. Note, such props will. Option 2, defeat Pella by relying on the number of people. She has only one person, everyone should go up together. Completion reward, caught by the silver-maned Iron Guard. Option 3, it is not advisable to stay here for a long time, and escaping is also an option. We should not confront the silver-maned Iron Guard head-on, it is better to leave first. Completion reward, get random props, as small as matches, as large as destroying stars. Ship. Note, such props will. The world has once again entered a state of static. After seeing option 2, Bo Chang immediately realized that Pella did not come alone. Perhaps she had already deployed many silver-maned iron guards nearby. It is an irrational decision to break into a fight with the opponent. There are still only two decisions left to Bo Chang. Or run away. Or negotiate with the other party. After hesitating for a moment, Bo Chang chose to negotiate with the other party. If he ran away now, he would definitely be wanted by the Silver-Mane Iron Guard. At that time, it followed a path similar to the original plot. This is probably what Sambo wants to see. The reward for option 1 is a little worse though. But, the reward of option 3 is not much better, it is too random. Option 1. Bo Chang shouted loudly, since you said you were the intelligence officer of the Silver-Mane Iron Guard, why didn't you help when the robbers attacked us? Instead, you hid and watched. Rewards are being distributed, congratulations on getting the 3-star destroying light cone. Tianqing note, this prop has been stored in the system space. Pella was stunned, she didn't expect Bo Chang to say that. March 7th echoed, yes, if we were just ordinary people, wouldn't we be robbed by them, and maybe we would be punished. This is impossible. I am watching from the side, there is no way they can succeed. Pella immediately retorted. Bo Chang pointed to the men on the ground. Are you sure? Miss Para, please take a closer look. These people have knives in their hands. When our conflict breaks out, if you don't stand up and stop us immediately, if we are ordinary people, we may be killed. Did you really have time to stop it at that time? As the Silver-Maned Iron Guard who protects the citizens, are you really qualified for your job? Bo Chang's two rhetorical questions made Pella fall into deep thought. One thing to say. In that case, Pella really couldn't stop it, after all, she was only a human being, not a god. Incompetent, did I do something wrong? I suddenly felt a little confused. But after a while, Pella shook her head, her eyes calmed down again, and said, what you said does make sense, but the question now is not this, but why you want to go to the lower area. Don't try to change the subject. I would like to ask, is it illegal to go to the lower area? Dan Heng spread his hands and asked the most critical question. Pella groaned and said, it's not illegal. That's all right. Instead of questioning us, you might as well tie up these robbers. After Dan Heng got the answer he wanted, he didn't intend to get entangled with Pella, let's leave first. Dan Heng took the lead, followed by Bo Chang, Yu Chi and others. When they reached the end of the alley, several silver-maned iron guards came out and stopped them. Dan Heng looked back. Even if you haven't committed any crime, during my investigation, I didn't find the household registrations of the 4 of you, so, you still have to come with me. Perla's tone became softer, don't worry, I'm just registering your household registration for you. Chapter 35 Specialties. The 4 of them looked at each other. In order to avoid making things worse, Dan Heng still chose to accept Pella's request, and the group of people, together with the robbers, were taken away by the silver-maned iron guards. Bo Chang felt helpless and thought to himself, what's going on? Even if I chose the first option, I was still caught by the silver-maned iron guard. I hope Pella can do what she said, just register our household registration. Bo Chang was a little worried that the other party would invite you to the urn. But the final facts show. Bo Chang thought too much. Pella really just applied for a household registration for them. Thank you for cooperating with my work in Perla's office. She poured a glass of warm water for each of the 4 of them. I just heard that you have no job and no fixed place to live. Do you need my help? As the intelligence officer of the Silver-Mane Iron Guard, Pella's job is quite complicated, including troop mobilization, material distribution, refugee management, and even explaining the history of Belloberg to the people. This is Pella's job. Certainly. In Pella's eyes, Bo Chang and others are refugees. It needs to be properly placed. Refugees like this. There are still many Balobergs. It is a difficult task to catch them and make these people pay their taxes on time every month. Dan Heng said. It would be great if Miss Para is willing to help. Although it is not clear what Dan Heng is doing, everyone is still a grasshopper on a rope. So they all agreed to let Pella help. In that case, Pella returned to her seat. She looked at the household registrations of the 4 people, which contained detailed information, such as gender, age, height, specialties, etc. Just a casual glance. Pella pushed these things aside and said, I saw the battle between you and the gangsters just now, you guys are all pretty strong. Have you ever considered joining the Silvermane Iron Guard? Let me tell you first, I am not forcing you to join the Silvermane Iron Guard. If you are not willing, I will rearrange the arrangements as you like. Now the battle between the Silvermane Iron Guard and the Split World is intensifying. Almost every day, several soldiers died and many more were injured. In severe cases, double digits may even be killed. For Belloberg, which has a small population, such casualties are already considered huge. The soldiers of the Silvermane Iron Guard are far from enough. So it's normal for Pella to want to recruit new people, but Dan Heng refused. Sorry, we don't want to join the Silvermane Guard. Heard this answer? Pella sighed softly, everything was as expected. Although the Silvermane Iron Guard's benefits are not bad, it is a high-risk profession after all, and not everyone can accept it. Okay, Pella frowned and took their information again, then what kind of job do you want to do? Dan Heng, I think your specialty is good at marksmanship, so don't go, it's really not easy to arrange the Silvermane Iron Guard. Dan Heng replied calmly, I can go sweep the streets. Sweeping the streets is hard work, and the salary is not high. It's only 300 Winter City shields per month. Are you sure you can accept it? Pella continued with the confirmation. Dan Heng nodded. Acceptable. Just kidding, when he was wandering among the stars, he had never done any work. It's just sweeping the streets, no problem at all. Next, Pella's eyes fell on the pink-haired girl. March 7th, your specialty is taking pictures. I remember that there was a photo studio that was short of apprentices. Although it was free, the monthly salary was only 200 Winter City shields. Can you accept it? Okay, we like taking pictures the most. March 7th accepted immediately. Pella looked at Bo Chang again and said, Bo Chang, your specialty is snowmobile maintenance technology. This is not bad. Zilla's the machine shop is in short supply of apprentices. Since you can repair cars, you should also know a little bit about other machines. Well, I do understand a little bit, but only a little bit. Bo Chang didn't talk nonsense either. After acquiring snowmobile maintenance and driving skills, Bo Chang can also repair some simple gadgets without a teacher. It doesn't matter. As long as you are willing to go, the owner of the mechanical house will teach you. Well, her apprentice salary here is 300 Winterfell guilders per month. What do you think? Perla's tone was relaxed, and the process of arranging jobs for these people was easier than imagined. Unlike other refugees who were caught. This job is not good, that job is not good, or the salary is too low. Ken. Bo Chang agreed immediately. Unexpectedly, the reward he received for repairing the snowmobile would come in handy now. Then there's only one left, seeing. Your specialty is, your fingers. Pella raised her head in confusion, wondering what the silver-maned iron guard who was recording the files was doing. Bo Chang, Dan Heng, and March Chi all looked at Seeing. The gray-haired girl blinked innocently. At first, Pella felt a little strange, but after taking a closer look, she found that it was the person who called her sister Pella with the children yesterday. It didn't seem so strange anymore. Well, I really don't know what work to arrange. Seeing, do you have any ideas? Perla looked at the dumb girl. The gangster who had been beaten with a baseball bat by his opponent before was howling and screaming. So, Para will never underestimate the other party. I don't know, I can arrange whatever you want, but you have to be closer to Bo Chang. Star replied. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I have the option of love in the starry sky. Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 26. Pella looked at the two people's couple outfits and said, then you go to the machine house with him. It's a buy one get one free deal. The salary is about 200 Winterfell guilders, no problem. No problem. After spending a while, the four people's jobs were decided. Para first took them to their respective places of work to register, and then took the four of them to find a place to live, and finally came to a small villa. That is a house that no one can afford to live in. This is my home. You should live here until you settle down completely. Pella smiled. This surprised Bo Chang, living in your home? Is this reasonable? Most people are sent to low-rent housing by me, but obviously you are not ordinary people, so you have to pay more attention, Para admitted frankly, but you can rest assured that I have another place to live. Will disturb you. Just from the fact that the four of them easily defeated a group of local gangsters before, Para knew that these people were not simple. Because there is no evidence that the other party is harmful. So the only thing she can do is look at each other carefully. I hope you can work hard in the future and stop thinking about going to the lower areas. I believe the environment down there is not as good as above. Until now, Perla didn't understand why these people wanted to go to the lower area, and she didn't intend to go into it. Chapter 36 Approval of Noble Morality. The reason why Pella didn't delve into it was simple, it wasn't a big deal anyway. So, after a brief tour and assigning rooms to everyone, Perla left. The four members of the pioneering team have temporarily settled down in Belloberg, and even have official identities. Checked it carefully. No instruments such as monitors were found. Everyone gathered in the living room to chat. We've been targeted. The lower area, it seems we can't go there for the time being. Then what should we do? March 7th looked at Dan Hung, should we work in Belloberg to make a living first? Well, let's follow Pella's idea first, and then we can take the opportunity to find out the information about the Star Core. Dan Hung paused. Bo Chang, please pay attention to Sambo, I think he may come again. Looking for you. Good. Bo Chang nodded. March Chi, who was sitting on the sofa, leaned back and said, it feels so slow like this, how about we show off our cards directly? Although we may encounter danger, is it fast enough? A direct showdown would indeed be quick. Because people with evil intentions will come directly to the door, which can save everyone a lot of time and energy. Dan Hung sighed. In March, although we are strong enough, we are not invincible. The universe is so big that we may encounter creatures stronger than ourselves at any time, so if we can hide in the dark, it is better to hide. This can avoid many things. Trouble. Okay, you have the final say. March 7th waved her hand casually, not intending to listen to the other party's long speech. Dan Hung continued, we are pretty lucky this time, there is a problem with Belloberg's own household registration system, which is why we can easily sneak in. We may not have such an opportunity next time. We must cherish this opportunity, and the two newcomers can also gain some experience. Experience? What experience? Sing's head tilted slightly. Dan Hung thought for a moment and said, starting from scratch, the experience of surviving in society, and the experience of finding information. Don't think that finding the Star Core is my task alone. You also need to find out information. Oh, that's it? Star nodded thoughtfully. Dan Heng then shook his head. Based on our situation today, it should be very difficult to go to the lower area, and even, it may not be possible to enter the lower area. We may have been tricked by Sambo. He might be someone from the upper echelons. Dan Heng, who is not a time traveler, cannot know the other party's true identity like Bo Chang. It is understandable to draw such a conclusion now. Bo Chang had no intention of refuting. A group of 4 people discussed in the living room for more than 10 minutes. After planning the next task, I declared it over. I spent a lot of time during the day because of Pella, and now it's night. It's time for dinner. Dan Heng still chose to eat out and spent dozens of Winter City shields. This expense is not small. While eating, Dan Heng also said that in the future, everyone will have to buy and cook their own food and cannot always eat outside. This glorious and arduous task. Naturally, it fell on Bo Chang. No way. Both March Chi and Seeing said they couldn't cook. What else did the pink-haired girl say? It's normal for beautiful girls not to know how to cook. Although Dan Heng can cook, he said that he has to concentrate on seeking information and may not be able to get home on time in many cases. So, Bo Chang could only accept this task. After dinner, the group returned home. Bo Chang was going to practice marksmanship again. The small villa arranged by Perla had a spacious backyard, which was just right for practicing marksmanship. It was much better than the previous hotel. You can use your own weapon this time. Dan Heng took out his spear. I will practice with you using Ji Yun, so you should be able to learn faster. Dan Heng's spear skills came from the Yunkai army. The spear skills he taught Bo Chang were not very sophisticated, and the moves were open and closed, simple and unpretentious. Under the starry night. Bo Chang thought about it. He raised his head and said, "Okay." In less than a minute, the spear of oath fell from the sky. Finally, it hovered beside Bo Chang. Because it was night, no outsiders could see the scene. Even if they saw it, they would only think that a meteor passed through the sky. Seeing this, Dan Heng waved the spear in his hand, like a black dragon flying in the air. Today I will teach you the technique of exerting force. Watch carefully. Bo Chang watched with wide eyes. Soon, the two of them were waving their spears together in the backyard. Sanyuki and Seen watched from the side. Finally, the pink-haired girl yawned and said, "Let's do something else. It's too boring to sit here and watch them practice their gun skills." The audience left, but it did not affect Bo Chang and Dan Heng's training. Just like before. After practicing for 2 full hours, the two stopped. That's it for today. We'll continue tomorrow morning and have a good rest at night. Dan Heng put away his spear. Bo Chang used the spear of oath as a crutch and tried to control his breathing. They practiced for 2 hours without stopping. Every strike was full of power. During this period, Dan Heng also practiced with him. All of this consumed a lot of physical strength. It was completely different from yesterday. It's like this at the beginning of training. You can keep up with my pace, which is already very good. Dan Heng stretched out his hand. Do you need help to go back? No. Let me, slow down, just slow down. Bo Chang refused. Dan Heng was not hypocritical and said, "Okay, then I'll leave first." The black-haired man turned and left, leaving Bo Chang alone. After a few minutes of rest, Bo Chang regained his mobility. Dan Heng had already reached his room on the 2nd floor. He stood by the window and looked at the black-haired boy below. He didn't look away until the other's figure disappeared. Dan Heng is really amazing. After exercising for so long, I can't see any sweat. Unlike me, my clothes are all wet. Bo Chang dragged his heavy steps in the room, still holding the gun of oath as a crutch. Since he was already sweating profusely, it's definitely not possible not to take a shower. Walking to the bathroom door, Bo Chang knocked on the door. "Who?" Sing's voice came from inside. Bo Chang replied, "It's me, Bo Chang." "Oh, then come in." As soon as the gray-haired girl finished speaking, Sanyuki's panicked voice came from inside, saying, "Bo Chang. Don't come in. We are." The love option is turned on. Option 1, push the door open like a warrior, and say, "Then I'll come in." Completion reward, March 7's big pussy. Option 2, turn around and leave like a gentleman, and say, "Oh, you're inside, I'll wait for you." Completion reward, praise of high morality, the fountain location in the central square of the Baloberg administrative district. You can consume a praise of high morality to salvage the treasure in the fountain once. Note, this kind of prop will. Chapter 37 First visit to the mechanical house. Either take a big pussy to feast your eyes, or take a seemingly useless one, praise of high morality. Forget it, it's better not to take a big pussy. Bo Chang didn't want to try how much psychological shadow area a big pussy could cause, not to mention that this move might cause March 7's disgust, which would not be worth the loss, so he turned and left. "Oh, you are inside, I'll wait for you." Rewards being distributed. Congratulations on your winning of the praise of high morality, the fountain location in the central square of the Baloberg administrative district. You can consume one praise of high morality to salvage the treasure in the fountain once. Note, this type of prop will. Bo Chang has left. The sound in the bathroom still did not stop. "Sing, what are you thinking about?" "We are taking a shower, how can we let Bo Chang in?" Fortunately, I reacted quickly. I have the option of love in the starry sky. Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 27. March 7th was chirping while soaking in the bathtub. Sing patted the water in boredom and said, "Bo Chang is special." Two fair-skinned and beautiful girls were bathing together. They exposed their delicate parts above the collarbone, while the rest was hidden under the water filled with holy light, with the occasional undulating mountain exposed. It is easy to cause reverie. I know your relationship is unusual, but it shouldn't. I didn't know what to say on March 71, so I could only sink my lips into the water and blow bubbles. Sing said, "What do you think of Bo Chang in March? Do you want to comment?" "It's okay. After all, he also saved me twice when I met the Doomsday Beast." March 7's cherry lips resurfaced. "I don't know what is said in it." Bo Chang waited for another 10 minutes. March Chi and Zinke walked out of the bathroom. They were wrapped in bath towels, and their curvy figures were a feast for the eyes. "The water is still hot and very clean. If you want to wash it, you can use it directly." The pink-haired girl was wiping her hair with a towel while talking. Sing nodded and said, "Bo Chang, if there is a chance next time, we can wash it together." March 7's scalp was numb, and he could not imagine that scene at all. There's no way you can have that kind of opportunity to talk. After saying that, in order to prevent Sing from saying something shocking again, March 7 pushed the other party away. Bo Chang just watched quietly. There was no time to speak, and the two disappeared at the top of the stairs. So, Bo Chang, who had just rested for another 10 minutes and was completely free to move, put down his oath gun and turned around and entered the bathroom. Because 700 years ago, Yalilo 6 also has interstellar civilizations, including the current Baloberg, which also has robots. So, the level of modernization here is still very high. All tap water and water heaters are equipped, and even the bathtub has a heat preservation function. "Take off your clothes." Bo Chang soaked in the water for a while, closed his eyes, and placed his hand on the bottom of the bathtub. Suddenly he seemed to touch something. The black-haired boy grabbed it, then picked it up and took a closer look. It is a curved pink hair. Bo Chang instantly realized what this was. It seems that they did not change the water or even clean it. He threw Mao Mao into the water casually. Bo Chang didn't care so much and continued to enjoy the pleasure of taking a bath. After a while, Bo Chang was bored. So I started looking for treasure in the bathtub. On the other side, Pella was lying on the bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The reason was simple. She kept thinking about what happened during the day. Ever since I discovered a few strange people yesterday, Perla launched an investigation. I found that these people had no household registration and acted strangely, as if they were trying to do something. So Pella, who was originally ready to arrest, waited. I want to see what the other party is going to do. The final answer was also very strange. These refugees actually wanted to go to the lower class area. Is it just to avoid taxes? Pella didn't know and didn't intend to ask. In her opinion, as long as these people work honestly and don't do anything stupid, it's fine. The rest is not under Pella's control. Also, did I do something wrong today? Bo Chang's accusation during the day has been lingering in his heart. This is what makes Pella most uncomfortable. But, I also noticed that Dan Heng has the power of destiny in his body, and they didn't panic at all, so. And it's not just Dan Heng who has the power of destiny in his body. Including March 7th and stars. Except for Bo Chang, he basically didn't take any action when encountering the battle. Even if he did, he would only beat the drowned dog. Pella was not sure whether the other party had opened his destiny. The other three are all turned on. So Pella felt that the other party should have also opened up his destiny. With such a force, facing a group of gangsters, there is basically no possibility of defeat. But even so, the time I came out was still too late, any accident could have happened. Pella's mind was in a mess, and she fell asleep after struggling for a long time. Time comes on the third day. This is the third day that Bo Chang and others came to Yali Logo 6. It's early in the morning again. Bo Chang was pulled up by Dan Heng to practice his marksmanship. The fatigue from yesterday had faded away today. The black-haired boy practiced with great vigor, and a blue spear danced in the air like a tiger. Because everyone has worked during the day. So, the morning workout, it's only half an hour. Bo Chang and Dan Heng finished practicing. March 7th and Sing also got up. Cleaned up a bit. The four of them went to their respective jobs. Bo Chang and Sing work in the same place, so they naturally go together. It didn't take long. The two came to the mechanical room and pushed open the door. Hello, Silva greeted with a smile at the counter, welcome to work in the perpetual machinery house. Bo Chang and Sing also replied. Because they had met yesterday, they knew each other. No need to report names. Zilawa said, you have just arrived, so you probably don't understand many things, but it doesn't matter, I will teach you well. The conspicuously dressed woman in front of him is Bo Chang and Sing's temporary boss. Silva Landa, this is her full name. She is tall, has beautiful long blonde hair and blue eyes. She wears an off-shoulder and navel-bearing dress that is a serious mix of black, white and blue. Especially the three swaggering blue-black feathers on the right shoulder have a rock and roll style. Just like Pella. Silva also wore a one-piece black stockings. Very few people in Belloberg wear white silk stockings. Maybe it's because black absorbs heat and keeps them warmer? As a result, everyone basically wears black silk stockings, and few people wear white silk stockings. What should we do? Star asked. Zilawa continued, since you are apprentices in the machinery house, what you have to do is to repair the machine. Bo Chang, you and Sing will try to repair this machine together. Silua bent down and took out a microwave-sized machine from under the counter. Bo Chang nodded. Leave it to us. Chapter 38 Starcore. Don't know why, but when it comes to repairing machines, Sing's talent was very good. Together with Bo Chang, she quickly repaired the machine that Zilawa took out without any guidance at all. Well done. Seeing this scene, Zillawa's eyes lit up and she felt that she had found a treasure. I also picked up two at once. Bakame said, it's just a simple wiring problem. It can be solved if you are serious. That's not necessarily true. Silva stretched out a finger and shook it, and the swaggering feathers on her body also swayed, which looked quite interesting. Many people can't even do such a simple question well. That's why my machine shop is always short of apprentices. The female boss of Yongdong Machinery House complained a few words. Next, Zillawa took the two of them on a journey to repair the machine. During this process, Bo Chang always looked at the gray-haired girl unconsciously, which also attracted Xing's attention and said, "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" "No. I just think you don't look good. Did you have another nightmare last night?" Bo Chang said casually that in fact he didn't pay attention to Xing because of this incident. But because no gray fur was found in the tub last night. I did see a few gray hairs. So, Bo Chang suspected that the other party was Bai Hu, but he had no evidence and was too embarrassed to ask. If I really ask, Hoshi will probably tell the truth. Bo Chang muttered in his heart. Xing replied, "Well, it's true, I had a strange dream again, I don't know what happened." After saying that, the gray-haired girl sighed. Hear what the two said. Zillawa interrupted, "Having a nightmare? Could it be that you covered yourself with too much quilt?" "No." Star shook his head. Silva next to her stopped what she was doing and said, "What kind of nightmare is it specifically?" "I have the option of love in the starry sky." Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 28. I can't remember clearly. Xing rubbed his temples, it seems to be a star core or something. Hearing this, Bo Chang suddenly realized that the other party was inquiring about information. Silva's eyes changed slightly. Star core? Where did you hear that? Although this female boss is now a maintenance technician out of interest, she used to be a scientific researcher for the Silver Main Iron Guard. She was raped by Kakalaya, who had a drastically changed temperament, because of her research on star cores. Stop research. At last, Silva broke up with Kakalaya, left the Silver Main Iron Guard in anger, and opened the Perpetual Mechanical House. And from time to time the concerts will be held behind closed doors. Xing just mentioned it tentatively, but Silva suddenly became serious. "Ah! I was dreaming about, what happened?" Star looked at Silva with big innocent eyes. The female boss, who had a serious face at first, slowly calmed down and thought to herself, "What am I thinking about? It's okay, I suddenly remembered something from the past, don't pay attention to me." Silva waved her hand, not intending to talk to everyone about the star core. Bo Chang and Xing looked at each other. Both of them realized, the woman in front of them knew the news about the star core. Bo Chang didn't play games for a long time. "I really don't know what the relationship between Silva and star core is. It seems that we can only explore step by step from now on, but, Xing and I are pretty lucky. It was only on the first day that we found information related to the star core." Bo Chang and Xing continued to repair the machine with Zillawa calmly. "I have to say, this job is still a bit boring." The three of them worked on the repairs until noon before they could take a breather. The machinery house includes lunch, so Bo Chang and Xing don't have to figure it out on their own. Zillawa directly ordered 3 takeaways. Until lunchtime, Silva was a little absent-minded, maybe still thinking about the star core. Bo Chang and Xing did not alert the enemy. Just after lunch, I took advantage of my break to post the news about the star core that the female boss of the machine house had learned to a group called Star Dome Train Family. There are 6 people inside now. GZI, March Chi, Xing, Dan Heng, Bo Chang, and Walter. If anything happens, everyone will talk inside. For example, Bo Chang called everyone together before Not long after Bo Chang sent out the news. March 7th, what? Did you find out the news about the star core so quickly? It's amazing, we still don't have a clue. March 7th, cat cries.jpg. Dan Hung, I heard that the city builder knows the information about the star core. Zillowa probably has contact with the city builder. Bo Chang, seeing, if you can, try to find out about Zillowa. Background, but don't be too deliberate so as not to arouse suspicion. Bo Chang, got it? Doghead.jpg. Star, will pay attention. Jitsi, it seems that your pioneering journey is going quite smoothly, keep up the good work. Except for Walter, everyone else sent messages in the group. Bo Chang glanced at it, then turned off the phone screen, and looked at Seeing. Danhan asked them to find out about Zillowa's background. This thing is still a bit difficult. It can be seen from the previous insinuations. Zillowa is not a big-mouthed person, and now that Bo Chang and Seeing are asking, it is very likely that they will arouse the other party's vigilance. He glanced at the blonde woman who was idle nearby, playing with a musical instrument. Bo Chang and Seeing opened their mobile phones to chat privately in tacit understanding. Star, what should we do? Bo Chang, don't rush, take your time. It's enough for us to know that Zillowa knows the star core on the first day. Star, okay. The simple chat is over. There was a noise at the door. Bo Chang and Seeing, who were sitting in front of the counter, put away their mobile phones and looked up, only to find that customers were coming to the door. For a mechanical house that is open for business, it is normal for customers to come to your door. The machines repaired by Bo Chang, Seeing, and Zillowa were all sent here by customers for repair. There are also many machines placed in the warehouse at the back. Some have been repaired but the customer has not come to pick them up yet, some cannot be repaired, and some have not been touched at all. The workload here is not small. No wonder the apprentice can earn 300 Winter City shields every month, which is almost the same as Dan Hung who sweeps the streets. Speaking of salary. After seeing Seeing's craftsmanship, Zillowa generously increased her salary to 300 Winter City guilders per month. I said it during lunch. At that time, Seeing smiled symbolically. Welcome. Bo Chang spoke first. The visitor was a young man. He glanced at the two people behind the counter and said to Zillowa, the heater I sent for repair yesterday, has it been repaired now? It's you, don't worry, it's been repaired. Silva, who was playing with the instrument, stood up and took out the heater from the cabinet next to him. Thanks for your patronage, 20 Winter City shields. Watching both parties pay with one hand and deliver the goods with the other, Bo Chang suddenly thought of something. Boss, can I go out for a while? Chapter 39 Jim Roger Bread Soda. Faced with Bo Chang's request, Zillowa naturally agreed. Anyway, it was lunch break time. Seeing saw Ba Kane was going out, and also proposed to go out together. The black-haired boy did not refuse. He took Seeing to the fountain in the central square of the Baloberg administrative district. Coming here, it is natural to use the praise of noble morality. See what treasures can be opened. Before crossing, Ba Kane searched the guide and saw what the praise of noble morality could open. Anyway, it was just a mosquito leg. I don't know if it will be a mosquito leg if I open it here. Ba Kane naturally hopes to open something good. Ba Kane, why are you here? Seeing showed a puzzled expression. Ba Kane said, just come out and take a look. It's boring to stay in the mechanical house all the time, isn't it? Is that so? Seeing thought Ba Kane had something to do. Unexpectedly, he just came out and took a look. After the two walked to the fountain. Love option directly prompts that you can use the praise of noble morality to salvage treasures. It is not necessary for Ba Kane to do it himself. Admiration of high morality -1. Rewards being distributed, Congratulations on winning Jim Rogers bread flavored soda. This thing tastes pretty good. Drinking it can quickly restore your physical strength. Note, this kind of prop will. This is it, it's okay, I just happen to be short of physical strength. With this prop, next time there is a fight, Bo Chang can drink a sip first to ensure the ability to continuously output. After the lottery, an uninvited guest came over. "What are you doing here?" The person who spoke was Dan Hung. He was holding a broom and wearing a black uniform of a sanitation worker. The cold-faced little Ching Long put on this and it fit him well. Bo Chang was a little surprised and said, "Dan Hung, why are you cleaning here?" If he remembered correctly, Dan Hung should not be responsible for the sanitation here. The man with a cold face replied, "Someone asked for leave, so I have to be responsible for cleaning two areas at the same time. That's why I can. Because this is not the place to talk." So Dan Hung stopped talking halfway. Bo Chang and Seeing understood what he meant. After all, he had said in the group that Dan Hung had heard about the Star Core from the city builders, and this was an administrative area. "Why are you here? Did you find out something?" "Nothing. I was just idle, so I took Seeing out for a walk. I never thought I would run into you." Bo Chang shrugged slightly. Dan Hung said, "Okay, since there's nothing to do, I'll continue cleaning." "Slow down." Bo Chang and Seeing waved and watched Dan Hung go away. Compared to their work, Dan Hung's work was indeed more tiring. Among the three people, the easiest job should be Sanyuki. Bo Chang and Seeing did not stay in the central square. They took a casual turn and returned to the machinery room to continue their afternoon work. In the morning, Zillowa was still very busy. After the afternoon, she was free and started to fiddle with her musical instruments. There were still some machines that had not been repaired. As apprentices, Bo Chang and Seeing did not say anything, but just quietly did their own work. While repairing the machine. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I have the option of Love in the Starry Sky. Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 29. While taking orders. The business of the machine house is still very good. The work is about to end. As a result, another customer came. The machinery really couldn't be repaired. Time flies and it's time to get off work. Bo Chang and Seeing had no intention of working overtime, so after saying something to Zillowa, they left. As a designated chef, Bo Chang had to go out to buy groceries and go home to cook at this time. Relying on the Winter City Shield given by Dan Hung, the two of them walked around the market and bought some ingredients before returning home. March 7th had gone home long ago. She was lying on the sofa, playing with her mobile phone casually. After seeing Bo Chang and Seeing coming back, she stood up in surprise and said, "You are finally back. I am alone at home, so boring. Because Seeing and I have to buy groceries and cook, we will definitely come back a little late." Bo Chang looked around. "Isn't Dan Hung back yet?" "Of course, didn't you see the message he sent in the group? He said he found some clues and would try to sneak into Clipper Castle tonight, so we don't have to worry about him." March 7th spread her hands and explained. Bo Chang said, "I didn't pay attention to the mobile phone, but since Dan Hung won't come back, let's just make it for 3 people. Well, go and cook quickly, my stomach is starting to growl with hunger." March 7th rubbed her flat belly. "No more nonsense." Bo Chang took the ingredients and turned around and entered the kitchen. Seeing originally wanted to go in and help. As a result, he was caught on March 7th. Bo Chang started to work alone in the kitchen. Before time travel, he often helped at home, so he still had experience in cooking and the like. Even though the ingredients in the two worlds are somewhat different. But, they are still connected in some places. After working for almost half an hour, Bo Chang made 3 bowls of fried rice with diced pork, and each person also had a bowl of soup. It can be said to be a feast. Just take these 3 big bowls of diced pork fried rice to a restaurant outside. It can sell more than 20 Winter City shields. When 3 bowls of fried rice are served, March 7th took a look and said, "The statue is not bad for sale, let's have a taste." After sitting down, the pink-haired girl began to taste. He took a tentative bite. March 7's eyes lit up. "It's very good. It tastes almost the same as the ones in restaurants outside." Sure enough, it was the right choice to let Bo Chang cook here. Seeing and Bo often took their seats in turn. Facing March Chi's compliment, Bo Chang didn't react at all. After finishing his meal quickly, he said, "I cooked the meal. Next, I'll leave the task of washing the dishes to you, no problem bar." Ah. There was a troubled expression on March 7th's face, as if she didn't want to wash the dishes. Seeing agreed quickly. "No problem, leave it to me." Seeing this, March 7th reluctantly agreed, "Since Xingdu is washed, then I will also come to help." The 2 girls went to wash the dishes. While they were washing, they chatted about what happened during the day. She didn't gain much all day long on March 7th. She just worked in the photo studio for a day, so when she heard that Bo Chang, Dan Heng and Seeing all found out, she was a little envious. The gray-haired girl comforted her. Bo Chang took a short rest, and then went to the backyard to continue practicing his marksmanship. Although Dan Heng is not here. But Bo Chang cannot be lazy when it comes to practicing marksmanship. He practices for 2.5 hours every day and always achieves something. The wind howled. Just when Bo Chang was practicing his marksmanship, Pella comes to visit. "Do you have time? I'll interrupt you for a moment." The petite Pella stood outside the door and nodded, maybe she was leaving in a hurry today. So there was still a hint of red on her round face. March 7th, who opened the door, asked doubtfully, "I have time, what's the matter?" Chapter 40 Sleeping Together. Pella, who was wearing a black felt hat, adjusted the round frame and calmed her breathing, saying, "As your recommender, I have the obligation to pay attention to your current situation regularly, so, it will be convenient for me to go in and talk." "Oh, convenient and convenient." March 7th smiled apologetically and then moved out of the way. Pella didn't change her shoes when she entered the house. Because Belloberg doesn't have the habit of going into the house to change his shoes. People including Bakang and March 7th also followed the Romans and walked around the house without changing their shoes. Certainly. The same goes for everyone on the Star Dome train. "Is everyone here today?" Pella asked as she entered the house. March 7, count with fingers outstretched. Seeing and Bo Chang are at home. Dan Heng is sweeping the streets outside and hasn't come back yet. There is indeed a lot of street sweeping work, and the rest time is short. Para walked into the living room and saw Seeing sitting on the sofa watching TV. "I didn't expect him to choose this job. I hope Dan Heng can persevere. It just so happens that Belloberg is also short of sanitation workers." March 7 did not speak. She can completely understand why Dan Heng chose to sweep the streets. Naturally, it is for the convenience of gathering information. As a sanitation worker, Dan Heng can wander around, and maybe even directly enter confidential areas with this status. "Where's Bo Chang?" Pella, who didn't see the black-haired man, asked again. March 7 said, "Bo Chang is practicing shooting in the backyard. He said he has to practice for 2.5 hours every day." "Shooting?" I said, "Why are you learning shooting?" Pella was a little confused. As if realizing that he had said something wrong. March 7 was quick-witted and said, "Well, we all like to exercise. After all, this is the only way to protect ourselves." Pella did not pursue it, but just went to the backyard to take a look with curiosity. Hearing the noise, Bo Chang's original fast dance of the Spear of Oath also slowed down. Pella looked at Bo Chang, who was training hard with sweat on his forehead, and began to sigh. "It's a pity that you don't join the Silver Mane Iron Guard." The blue spear in his hand hit the ground. Bo Chang wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "Miss Para, how come you have time to come to us? Come to see how you are now." Para looked back and saw Seeing and March 7 beside her. "How is it, can you adapt to the work I arranged?" "No problem at all." Bo Chang gave a thumbs up. Sanyuki and Seeing also nodded. Para said, "That's good, Ba Kane, you continue to exercise. I'll talk to these two first and won't bother you." After that, Para took Seeing and Sanyuki away. Originally, Ba Kane thought that the intelligence officer of the Silver Mane Iron Guard would leave soon. Unexpectedly, until the black-haired boy finished his exercise. Para was still at home. "It's past 9 o'clock now. Danhan hasn't come back yet." Sanyuki, who was worried about his safety, contacted him through his mobile phone, only to know that he was still busy. Ba Kane, who had just finished exercising, wanted to take a bath. Unexpectedly, he was stopped by Para. "Have you finished exercising?" "Yes." Ba Kane nodded and looked at Para sitting on the sofa. "What's the matter?" "Miss Para, I want to talk to you." Para said so. Ba Kane looked around and saw that Sanyuki and Seeing had gone upstairs to rest. There were only the two of them in the living room on the first floor for the time being. Because today's training, there was only Bo Chang, and no Dan Hung to supervise and teach, so he didn't sweat like yesterday, but just a little bit. At least his clothes were not soaked. "Well, okay." Bo Chang also sat on the sofa, keeping a certain distance from Para. The petite girl wearing round-framed glasses stared at the boy in front of her. For Bo Chang. In fact, Para was very curious. After all, asking for measurements in public is not something that ordinary people can do. This one thing alone. It was enough to make Bo Chang leave a strong impression in Para's heart. What's more, he also loudly rebuked her for being incompetent afterwards. "Miss Para, do you have anything to ask?" Bo Chang spoke directly. Para said, "When I was chatting with them just now, I heard that you can cook, and the taste is no worse than that of restaurants outside. In this case, have you ever considered becoming a chef? As long as your cooking skills are good enough, you can get 500 Winter City Shields a month. I have the option of Love in the Starry Sky." Author, Lao Cha Shugu. Chapter 30. Bo Chang didn't expect Pella to wait for a long time just to talk about this. Pause for a moment. Bo Chang replied, "That's no need. I'll just work in the machine room first." Next. Pella and Bo Chang talked about other topics, such as whether they were used to living there, whether the work was hard, whether they were satisfied with the law enforcement of the Silver-Maned Iron Guard, whether they were satisfied with the city's infrastructure, etc. After some questioning, Pella left satisfied. Bo Chang went to take a bath as usual, but he didn't encounter yesterday's emergency today, and even the love option was not triggered once. I originally thought I could lick Pella's body. Unexpectedly, it was actually the Air Force today. Take your time. Bo Chang was not in a hurry. When he came out from the bath comfortably, Dan Hung had already returned home. And checked the house again. The cold-faced Xiao Qinglong said as soon as they met, "I have found out the information about the Star Core. The city builder has studied that thing, and the Star Core is still in the hands of the city builder. The efficiency of Danhan's investigation is amazing." Bo Chang suddenly realized that if he didn't move for a moment, the other party might be able to finish the work alone. "How's the situation over there?" Dan Hung then asked again. Bo Chang said, "Zillowa is quite strict with her words. Seeing and I didn't dare to ask further questions. We can only see if there is a chance in the future. Yes, Dan Hung nodded, his gaze resting on the black-haired boy. Don't worry, let's rest today and continue tomorrow. Also, you didn't forget to practice your marksmanship. Of course I haven't forgotten. I just took a shower after exercising. Because March 7th told the group about Pella's arrival. So, there is no need for Bo Chang to tell Dan Hung superfluously. Good. The cold-faced little Qinglong didn't bother taking a bath. Bo Chang went up to the second floor and entered his room to rest. This two-story villa has 5 rooms on the second floor, so everyone no longer has to squeeze 2 people into one room this time, they are all one person one room. Bo Chang, who had finished washing, changed his clothes and lay on the bed. Speaking of which, it's been a while since I obtained the power of the sheep charm. Isn't it time to use it experimentally? If my soul leaves the body, I can also go and get information. In view of the embarrassing situation of using the power of the dragon talisman last time, it can be said that Bo Chang was cautious about using the sheep charm, even though he hesitated repeatedly. There was a knock on the door. Bo Chang sat up and said, "Who?" "It's me. This is the voice of the star." Bo Chang immediately opened the door and looked at the gray-haired girl wearing only a white shirt. His heart beat slightly faster. He took a deep breath and said, "What's wrong?" "I can't sleep, can you sleep with me tonight?" Star rubbed his eyes. The romance option is turned on. Chapter 41 The price of food will rise. Originally Bo Chang thought the Air Force would be here today. Unexpectedly, at the end of the day, the love option was triggered again. Option 1, don't miss this opportunity, the time will never come again, immediately agree, okay. Completion reward, mental power increased by 100%. Option 2, in order to avoid misfire, touch Xing's head, it is not acceptable for a man and a woman to live together in the same room in the middle of the night. Completion reward, high moral praise, the location of the fountain in the central square of Belloberg district, you can spend a high moral approval to salvage the treasure in the fountain. Note, such props will improving mental power. After so long, there is finally an option to increase mental power. In this case, the invisible hand can also be greatly strengthened. As for why there were no negative rewards for this ambiguity with seeing, Bo Chang thought it might be because there were no extra people. No need to hesitate, just decide on option 1. What is the praise of high morals? Really unfamiliar. Okay. After getting Bo Chang's consent, Xing entered the room. She was only wearing a white shirt. It looked like she was not wearing pants. She relied on the hem of the shirt to cover her buttocks. Her slender legs were unreservedly exposed to the black hair. In the young man's eyes, Bo Chang closed the door smoothly, and the light coming from outside the corridor gradually became narrower and eventually disappeared completely. The light in the room was very weak. Rewards are being distributed, congratulations on your 100% increase in mental power. A chill went straight from the spine to Tianling Gai, and quickly spread to all limbs. The comfortable Bo Chang almost screamed. The moment he felt the system strengthening, Xing had already gone to bed. The gray-haired girl who lifted up the quilt patted the empty seat next to her and said, "Bo Chang, come and have a rest." Light pollution through the window. Bo Chang looked at Xing quietly, his golden eyes still the same as when they first met. Xing was lying on his side, facing Bo Chang. Due to his posture, his white shirt revealed a medium-sized gap. His gaze could just penetrate it and see a glimmer of holy light in it. Although I observed it through the wrapping of the bath towel when I took a shower yesterday. But definitely not as obvious as it is now. There was no need to suppress the evil thoughts in his heart. When Bo Chang saw Xing's calm and somewhat weak golden eyes, the fire in his heart naturally extinguished a lot. The other party didn't have anything else on his mind, he just wanted a different place to sleep. Bo Chang, Xing urged. Bo Chang shook his head to eliminate the bad thoughts and said, It's coming, it's coming. Wearing thin pajamas, Bo Chang went to bed and lay next to Seeing. Facing him, the gray-haired girl closed her eyes and went to sleep. Bo Chang also faced him, but it was not easy to rest. Even if he closed his eyes, he would still be upset by the sound of Seeing's breathing and couldn't sleep for a long time. Don't think about it, don't think about it. Bo Chang muttered a few words in his heart. At this moment, he suddenly realized something. By the way, Seeing has been in these few days. She is having strange dreams, so she is not in good spirits. I can use the power of the sheep charm to make her dreams beautiful. After thinking for a moment, Bo Chang began to use the power of the sheep spell. When there is no spell as a carrier, using the power of the sheep spell requires Bo Chang to control it himself, and problems can easily occur if you are not careful. The original dragon talisman is a good example. Carefully mobilizing the power of the sheep talisman, Bo Chang's soul immediately left his body. Compared to the power of the dragon talisman, the power of the sheep talisman seemed much easier to control. Bo Chang could feel that even in a spiritual state, he could still use the power of the sheep talisman to make other people's souls leave their bodies. In this way, he should be able to snatch other people's bodies. Just let that body be an empty shell. Just get in there yourself. It seems a bit abnormal. Bo Chang shook his head. In order to avoid causing problems with other people's souls, he would never use that kind of power on his teammates. What if he becomes a vegetative state? Trouble. Huh? It's only been 10 minutes and Seeing has already fallen asleep. After the soul leaves the body, Bo Chang could see a halo of light representing dreams appearing on Seeing's body. As long as he got into it, he could dream and see what kind of dream the other party was having. With a little guidance, let Seeing have a good dream and have a good sleep. Think of this. Bo Chang entered Seeing's dream in the form of a spiritual body. For a moment, the whole world has been turned upside down. Bo Chang saw all kinds of strange sights. He saw a huge figure looking down at the world, and saw a room with a vague-looking woman talking to the air. It's Kakalaya and the star core here. Xingui has strange dreams, probably because of the star core in his body. Bo Chang saw Seeing. She stood blankly, watching the story in front of her as if watching a movie. The star in the dream has no ability to control itself. Then, Bo Chang grabbed Seeing's hand and said, "Seeing, what are you doing?" "Me, I don't know." The black-haired boy suddenly broke into the dream, making Seeing a little confused. The romance option is turned on. Option 1, look at Seeing with a serious face and say, "Seeing, the Earth has been invaded by monsters again. Let's quickly merge into Ultraman and fight the monsters. Completion reward, the price of food will increase, super double." Option 2, push the star to the ground with your backhand and say, "The grappling technique I just learned." Completion reward, obtain the skill, grappling technique, your ability to deal with a certain creature that you can come into contact with. Once captured, success is certain. Option 3, grab Seeing's hand, run up, and say, "Didn't we agree to get married today? Come with me to the wedding venue, it's a big day, and the bride doesn't have to be here." Completion reward, obtain the equipment, teleportation ring, can be teleported at will within 10 meters. It comes with 3 bars of energy. Each use consumes 1 bar and requires 24 hours of charging to restore 1 bar. Note, such props will. Note 2, this prop can be bound after encountering another teleportation ring to enable mutual teleportation. Seeing, you are really my big treasure. Bo Chang didn't expect that the love option would be triggered for the second time so quickly. Except option 1. Options 2 and 3 are both good. The grappling technique is eye-catching. The first capture of a certain creature must be successful. Does this mean that even the star god can be captured alive? But after the capture, the end should be tragic. Bo Chang understood this kind of thing without even thinking about it. I can't even see the face of the star god, let alone capture him. Bo Chang shook his head in his heart, shattering his own random thoughts. Well, the teleportation ring is also good. Chapter 42 Silver Wolf's Gaze. The teleportation ring can only teleport 10 meters. In the past, Bo Chang still felt vaguely that it was a little strange. Now it's no longer surprising. It turns out that 2 teleportation rings are needed to activate the teleportation function. Teleport at will within 10 meters. It's just the basic functions that come with it. With this thing, it means that Bo Chang can travel between different planets at will. Even if the Star Dome train drives to a faraway place, he can still go back to the place where he has been before, just like going shopping. Just leave the teleportation ring behind and you'll do it. Should I choose the second one or the third one?